Okay, time to do this. It is now the following week, and I am back recording lesson one of the CYBR 3200 class. I'm doing it here at the office now. It turns out at the office I have camera views that I can run through. Probably mostly be using this one here, but yeah, cool. Uh, okay, let me look through my notes here and see where we're gonna started. Okay. So I'm going to run through this pretty quickly because I've already delivered this for the students, but I did promise that I was going to do this for other people that wanted to follow along. And so I'm doing that. And so my students can come back in and watch this if they want to later. So this is client server security models. I'm not pleased with the title of the course here, right? But you know, it is what it kind of describes it, right? To me, it's kind of like we're looking at web application security, pen testing kind of stuff, right? And this is a class here where I very much intend to give the students, you know, practical advice with regards to things they can do to get to do a little better with their pen testing and to learn this stuff here, right? So moving on, I'm gonna move to this view. Cool, now we have it. So why are we here, right? So I started out this asking the students, you know, why do you think we're here? So of note, this is a newer class to my knowledge. It's only the second or third time that it's actually run, and it's a fundamental thing that I think that students in the cybersecurity industry need to learn, right? Like I do believe that it's the case that they need to know the topics that are being discussed here, and they aren't necessarily things that are going to get that they're going to learn in any other way, right? So when I gave this lecture last week, right, like the thing here is we're here to understand, right? We're not here to learn how to click buttons. We're not here to learn how to be script kiddies, right? Like we're here to understand how a web application works. We're here to understand what it takes to potentially compromise a web application. Now, that being said, there's a very large distinction that I wish to make here, right? And that distinction is that offensive doesn't have to be the same thing as unethical, right? Like it is very much the case that we can be we can be curious, right? And we can learn. But the difference is doing this without permission, and permission may be granted by something like a bug bounty, right? But doing this without permission puts us clearly on the side of unethical, right? And unlawful. I don't want anyone to take anything they learn here and become arrested, right? Get arrested. So bear that in mind that we do require permission as we go through things here. And another piece here that I wish to note is you'll find as we go through this, attacks are often pretty boring, right? Like TV dramatizes, you know, what these things actually look like, but in the real world, attacks are actually relatively boring, and you'll see that as we go through them. So again, we're covering from offense to defense, right? We're trying to cover both, right? Because I very much believe that if you wish to understand offense, then you need to understand defense, right? Because how do you get beyond something that you don't know? Right? I think Matt Lee, my friend Matt Lee, puts it best, right? Like, when's the last time you saw a winning offense on a football team that doesn't understand how blocking works? When's the last time that you saw a winning defense on a football team not watch tapes of offense they're facing, right? So in the real world, we oftentimes see offense and defense kind of put together, right? So the goal here for this class, for the students in class, if you're watching this outside of it, it's a little bit trickier, but the goal is for them to get real hands-on experience with real systems. I might see later if I can stand up my CTFD in a way that allows the general public that may be watching this some ability to do this. But it's not a core concern right now, and I am putting a ton of effort into this class outside of that anyways. So who am I? My name is Jason Slagle. If you're watching this on YouTube, you probably already know that. I'm the president of CYBR Inc., which is a managed service provider in the Toledo, Ohio area. I'm a cybersecurity practitioner and speaker. I've been doing this for many years, since well, I mean, before it was really an industry that I realized you could work in. I led the Delnet exploits team from like 1998 or 99 up through like 2002. which old IRC network, actually spoke at NANOG in 2001. This is 21. About denial of service attacks we were having, right? And we were doing it. I am also the recipient of that thing back there, which is the GTIA North America Spotlight Award for Cybersecurity Leadership. Proud of it, right? Like it's a recognition of the work that I do and my attempts to give back. But I care about this topic deeply. I often see the case that students come out of college unprepared for what the real world's going to bring them. Right. So I'm here and I am teaching this class in an attempt to provide experience that I view, given the topic set that we're covering here, will make the students prepared for the world that they're about to enter. So in the class, I asked the kids to do an intro, not super relevant here since we're on YouTube. So I'll go ahead and move on. In the class, and this is relevant to the kids that are in the class, how I'm going to grade you, right? Like 40% roughly labs. They're going to be CTF based. I actually have the CTFD stood up now. 30% on exams. There'll be 2 midterm and a final. There'll be some practical applications of them, and 30% on assignments and quizzes. I probably won't do a lot of quizzes, but I will do some assignments because they let me check that you're understanding the concepts. The university requires me to put an AI policy now in my course syllabus, so I did. Just generally, I believe in a doctrine of reasonableness, right? If I asked a group of people if your request is reasonable, will most say yes, right? It's reasonable to miss class, right? It's reasonable to have life hit you. It's reasonable for all of those things to happen. However, it's unreasonable for you to not do any work and then come to me with 2 weeks left in class and ask for a bunch of makeup work and a bunch of homework, right? Like, don't make your problem my problem. I'm very flexible. I've actually never failed a student that put in all the effort, but you have to put in the effort. Same thing with AI, right? AI is allowed. I don't care. I'm using AI to help build this class, right? To help me go through mass amounts of data and to organize my thoughts, because I have a lot of thoughts here, right? But putting them in paper that like a stream of people like me are going to be able to understand is hard. So I'm using AI to help here, right? Like, so I expect you to be able to use AI. Right, like you're never going to get locked in a room without access to resources. Well, not never, but very infrequently are you going to be in a room without access to resources, right? It's one of the reasons that my exams will likely be take home, and I don't care what resources you use. However, you have to be able to explain it. I am teaching understanding, right? I want you to understand how to do this. And honestly, if you don't come out of this understanding it, there is no one to blame but yourself for that, because I'm here, the other students are here, right? And I think I at least deeply care that we understand it. So, just do the work to do it. So AI is a tool to help you understand, but it's not a tool to replace understanding, right? Like if you want to use AI to help write your papers, organize your thoughts, that's great, right? But like, don't let AI become the thing that basically answers all your questions for you and then you can't explain it, because you won't learn anything. You're only cheating yourself. Pull you into a room and ask you about it, and you can't explain it, then we're probably going to have a discussion. And I really kind of don't want to have to do that. So don't do those things. In this class, eventually we're going to be using Kali Linux. We haven't gotten there yet. This will be day 3. We're still not going to be there. I'll probably start to introduce that in next either Thursday this week, which is, class 4 or class 5. We'll start to introduce that. We'll be using some browser-based dev tools. In all honesty, we'll probably stick with that for a little bit. Inside of Kali, probably going to be making pretty heavy use of Burp Suite, right? I think it's a great tool for us to explain web apps. I might tinker with some SQL map and some other tools that are in there, right? All of the tools we use will run well on Kali, right? So that's why the ask is there. You can do it without Kali, but like you're going to be on your own for figuring out how to make the tools run. Our labs are going to be running CTFD. That is stood up. So as we go through that, they'll be there. So why does this course matter? The reality of it is that a lot of the attacks we're seeing these days, for better or worse, they start with web apps. That you may not think of them as traditional web apps, but some high profile cases, some of the Fortinet stuff, right? Like, and then those are web apps, and they're things that we're trying to get through, and they manifest themselves in weird ways, and the internet is moving to mostly web apps. So this is going to continue to be a bigger problem, right? Looking at Log4Shell, right? Like that was largely exploited via web, although not solely. Things in my space, like the Screen Connect incident, right? For sure, a web application. There's a high profile vulnerability in N8N right now, right? Another web app. And in many cases, we're not securing these things out of the gate, and we're acting reactively to the things that we see here, and that usually costs more than securing it from the beginning. That's not entirely true for a lot of these brownfield applications. N8N has no excuse, but things like the SSL VPN running in a lot of these things, or even Screen Connect, right? This is code that was written during a different time and place in the cybersecurity journey, right? So it's always going to be the case that we're probably going to have to try to backfill that and figure what it is. But like generally, getting it right the first time makes it easier. Other stuff, I'm a fairly frequent conference speaker, so I'll end up missing some classes. If you're actually in my class, I'll post videos on Blackboard. My goal is to have them done before. This week or last week, obviously couldn't because I didn't have access to Blackboard until Friday, right? So I ended up not uploading anything until Saturday morning, just because of my conference schedule. If you're in the class is better if you participate. It'd be more fun for everybody. And because this is a new class, this fluid's going to be scheduled. I'm already changing it. I'll try to keep the syllabus up to date in Blackboard as I change it, but I probably won't update it every week. I'll probably every couple weeks go through and say, okay, based on what I know now, this is what I think it's going to look like. So moving on, why are web applications hard to secure? Right? This is the meat of why we're here today. I'm supposed to ask the room why web applications are hard to secure, but you're not there, so I can't. So we're just gonna move on to the next slide here. Well, if we're gonna talk about why web applications are hard to secure, we should probably ought to start with what a web application is. To me, they have several components, right? They have a client, which is in almost all cases a web browser, although that is a really murky thing. It could be your phone, right? There's a lot of applications now that are just basically web apps that are as an application on your phone. There's a server in almost every case. There are some exceptions again to this rule, but generally there's something processing data on the back end, and we use HTTP in between them. Right? Like we can call HTTPS, it is its own thing, but it's just fancy HTTP. It's HTTP with TLS or SSL. I hope TLS these days layered on top of it. Right? The client is where the user lives generally, right? And it is generally an unknown, untrusted environment that oftentimes gets treated as a trusted environment by developers. And that'll be the crux of a lot of the work we do in this course. HTTP is, in this case, just the transport method. It's just the method that we use to move data from one side, the client side, of the server side. So what do we look like for client versus server responsibilities? Well, in this case, the client side is, it's convenience, right? It's what the user interacts with. It's the UI UX that the user is exposed to. The server is enforcement, right? The server is responsible for business logic and ensuring that things are done in a timely, done correctly. And that is generally where I think most of the security should live. Right? Like, client is responsible for convenience for the user, UI UX, probably some caching, right? Like display, input, all that other stuff. Most of the enforcement logic should generally live on the server side, and we'll talk about why that doesn't happen and why that causes us problems as we go through this class. This is a core tenet here. When we talk about HTTP, it's stateless, right? It doesn't have any concept of connecting a request from yesterday or from 5 minutes ago with a request now, right? Like it is 100% stateless. And so we've worked around that in a number of interesting ways, right? Like those ways, they could be cookies, they could be session variables that get included in the URL. We could push a lot of the work client side and just use something like an API and basically move all the state to the client. Every single one of these is a trade-off that has issues associated with them, right? And a big piece of what we talk through, and what we're talking through in later lessons, we're starting to get to it now. A lot of that statelessness can cause issues and cause chaos to us, right? So that memory is a thing that we will and can attack here as we go through this class, right? So we want to consider it as we go through. Over time, we've had an explosion of attack surface, right? Back in the day, websites were simple. I remember coding my first CGI in Perl or C. Man, the world was simple. In C, it was a little harder. Stateless doing CGI in C is kind of not real fun, and Perl was a little bit easier, right? But in that case, you typically had a form, right? It posted to a backend web server, and the web server rendered the entire page, right? Like there were no APIs. Like maybe I talked to an API for a third-party service, but the client never talked to me with an API. I had headers. They've always been a thing in HTTP, but most of them didn't matter. And at most I had a cookie to track state or some preferences, right? Things were really simple. Now we're in this world where in many cases, we run these single page applications with things like React, where almost all the state lives client side, and the client is talking to a well-known API that may be REST, it may be something else, right? Like, and we have to go through and consider that, and that has very much made our attack surface here a lot larger, and it continues to get more complicated day by day, right? This gives us as attackers a lot more place to start to look through some of these. And as we get into the class, again, this is just intro. We're introducing concepts. As we go through the class, we will explore many of these items. But I think as we go through this, it's important to remember that a vulnerability is not an exploit, right? Something can be vulnerable and no exploit could exist, or does exist, or could exist, right? There are vulnerabilities that are so difficult to exploit, it's unlikely you will ever see one. And an exploit doesn't mean there's impact, right? It could be denial of service, right? It could be relatively low impact if exploited. So it's important for us to consider what the risk turns into, right? Like a vulnerability existing creates risk, and the context around that is a thing that we can quantify, or at least attempt to quantify on the blue team side to determine the order with which we should attack these things or trying to fix them. As we go through this course, we're going to use a number of things, CVSS, which is a common vulnerability scoring system, and other things like CWE, common weakness enumeration, and other things to try to grade this and to try to have a common taxonomy here as we go through this stuff. But the thing to remember here is that as we talk through these things, just because something's vulnerable doesn't mean it's easily or even possibly exploited. So as we go through this class, one of the things that I want to impart on everybody here is why do attackers win? Right? Like they don't always win, but why do they win when they do? Well, they often win because there's asymmetry here, right? And what do I mean by asymmetry? What I mean is in the case of an attacker, the defender has to have everything right. If they don't have everything right, then we open a window for the attacker. The attackers can use automation, right? They can run hundreds or tens of thousands of requests, whatever the case is, right? They don't have to click, 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 and they don't. They usually don't click, 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 click. They use automated tools to help them do this. And we'll get to tools eventually, but not yet. And they don't usually need permission. Bad guys don't ask you if they can hack you. They don't ask you if they can compromise you. They just do it, right? So, the combination of those things makes it really difficult for defenders to defend. However, the converse is also true. Once somebody is in, they have to be right 100% of the time, because if they're not, they get detected. And it is, detection is a very valid thing here that we should think about and look at. And in some cases, it's actually easier to detect and contain than it is to fix a problem. For better or worse, that is the world we live in now, and it is the thing, right? Like a developer can write 100,000 lines of correct code and make one bug. And that one bug can be the thing that gets somebody popped, right? So they have to be right 100% of the time. And the last thing I want to cover here, I think that this is the last big slide that we're going to talk about here. And I did kind of speed run through this stuff just to try to get it out for you guys before class today. We're going to talk a lot about trust boundaries. Right? Every boundary where data passes between systems is a boundary of trust and something we should consider, right? Every one of those boundaries has decisions associated with it. Every one of those boundaries has validation that should or could concern, right? And a core thing that we're going to talk about the entire semester here is where do those boundaries live, right? What assumptions are made as data crosses those boundaries, and what can we do to try to pull apart some of the like threads at that edge of the boundary to see where we can cause some trouble. In many cases, those failures to the backend developer, they may be silent, they may not log anything, right? I see that a lot where detection is very difficult just because of how things are architected, and we'll talk about that as we start to get to some of these things too. So again, I kind of went through this really quickly. This first class that I gave last week, we ended up finishing probably about 20 minutes early because I'm trying to get a handle on how much stuff I can cover in one session. I obviously don't think I had enough this first time. But what didn't we cover? We didn't cover the OWASP Top 10, injection, cross-site scripting, authentication flaws. We didn't cover any meat here, right? Like my goal here today was to introduce everyone to the concepts that we will be covering upcoming. And we're starting to, like today, a week later, we're going to start talking about the OWASP Top 10. We're starting to get to some of the other things that will be more exciting here. If you were in class, you should have done this already, but I'll cover it. We were asking you to cover chapter 1 and 2. I did make 2 not optional because I was wrong about what was actually in it based on a wrong copy of the book. And we did talk about those things. As we started going through it in day 2, and we'll talk about them more today. Again, if you were in class a week ago today, Thursday was remote because I was at Code Mash. I did post a video. And then I want to leave everyone with this final thought here. What assumption do we think developers make that attackers do not? Think about that. There are a lot of them, right? And as we go through and we start talking about things more, those assumptions drive a lot of the risk that we have associated with things here. Anyways, that's all I have for you. Again, I kind of ran through that really quickly. In class, I covered it more deeply. My goal here is, as I go through these lessons, is to pretty quick after I deliver them so that a lot of what's in my mind is still fresh and I can deliver a version of it that's pretty similar. I don't think they will ever be quite as long. I just don't think I have it in me to do a 60 to 80 minute lecture and then come back and record a 60 to 80 minute lecture. So I'm aiming for these videos to be in the 40-minute thing. Anyways, let me know if there's anything anyone needs here. If you're in the class or if you're not in the class and following along, let me know what you think. And I'll talk to you all later, and I'll see my students here in a couple hours. See ya.